In Memphis, Tennessee, someone is killing prostitutes. Police make an arrest, but a psychic tells a homicide cop he's got it wrong.
I knew that he had arrested the wrong man.
We knew we had the right man. There was just no doubt about it.
Then the killer strikes again. Can the psychic help the cop to catch a psychopath before he kills again and again?
It was totally evil.
Perched on the banks of the Mississippi and home to the blues and rock and roll, where Elvis lived and died. Memphis, Tennessee is one of the most famous cities in America.
Memphis is like the capital of the Mid-South. It's completely different from the rest of the state. We have the river, we have the blues.
But Memphis is also one of the most dangerous cities in America. It's a city with a long tradition of crime and violence.
Memphis was always known as a fairly violent river town. In fact, during one period of time in the 20s, Memphis was one of the most violent cities in the United States.
Anywhere from homicides to assaults to prostitution, you work in the street. There was a lot of drugs.
There are parts of South Memphis that you don't want to go.
August 15th, 1988. 25-year-old Sharon Denise Moore is working the street in the notorious South Memphis red light district. But her last trick turns deadly. She is shot at point-blank range with a .32 caliber handgun. It's the 95th murder in Memphis that year. It doesn't take homicide detectives long to line up a prime suspect. Two witnesses finger a man named Larry Ward.
They had canvassed the area and sent some people back out to where he had been and actually had statements from two witnesses who basically tied him to the victim prior to her death.
And he had left with her and came back by himself and had a pistol.
Cops soon track Ward down and corner him close to the scene of the crime. After a brief chase, he is quickly arrested.
They felt that they had a pretty good case on him, and that's the reason he was charged.
The very next day, however, the routine homicide takes a bizarre twist. Carol Pate, a psychic visiting Memphis on vacation, has an unexpected and disturbing vision about the murder, even though that murder has not been made public.
I got a vision, intuitive knowledge, if you will, that there was a serial murderer on the loose in Memphis. Hi, I'm looking for Captain.
She immediately calls Captain Ken East of the homicide squad.
A lot of police departments really don't like to get involved with psychics, but I've always been open-minded.
I told him that I had this vision of this serial murderer and that he was stalking and pursuing prostitutes and shooting them. And I told him I had references with other police departments, and if he felt that what I was giving him was important, I'd like to meet with him.
There's no reason not to respond to her as long as she seemed like she was on the up and up.
Carol Pate uses a technique known as psychometry to connect with her paranormal subjects.
An actual photograph of a crime scene contains a signature frequency of both the victim and the murderer.
When she touches it, she says she can tune in like a radio to receive information.
I can then go into the past, present, future. He showed me some photographs, crime scene photographs, and I began to get some information. Number one was I knew that he had arrested the wrong man.
The wrong man. Is it possible Larry Ward is not the killer? Or has the psychic made a mistake?
The witnesses had said that he was in there bragging about shooting the girl. So we knew we had the right man. There was just no doubt about it.
It didn't really make a lot of sense to him, nothing to back up the information that I had.
And I told her I appreciated it, and if we had anything come up, I'd call her.
I felt like I would hear from him again.
Ken East ignores the psychic's strange visions. Six weeks later, another prostitute is murdered. She's shot with the same type of gun as the first victim. Police immediately suspect Larry Ward, who had been released on bail until his trial.
He'd been out for 3 days, so we picked him up again.
But the cops are wrong. Ward surprises them with a solid alibi. At the time of the second murder, he was in a restaurant miles away. A dozen witnesses back up his story.
It doesn't make sense because here you've got him so well on the first one and with witnesses, and so we go back to those same witnesses and re-interview them and offer them a polygraph, and it turns out they were mad at him and they lied on him.
Ken East's open and shut case is suddenly blown wide open.
We were at the dead end, was block 1, start all over.
Carol Pate was right after all.
So I picked up the phone, called her, and I said, well, our case kind of fell through.
It was in fact true that he had the wrong man.
2 murders, and Memphis homicide has no suspects. Now Carol Pate makes a chilling prediction.
This was a serial murder. This was not going to be 1 or 2. It was going to be more.
This time, will the police listen? In South Memphis, 2 prostitutes have been shot dead. Police arrest a suspect, Larry Ward. But psychic Carol Pate tells a homicide detective he's made a mistake. Further investigation proves she's right.
It was in fact true that he had the wrong man in custody.
Now, desperate to catch a killer who had already struck twice, and with nothing to lose, Captain Ken East reconnects with the psychic.
He wanted to know if I'd be willing to come to Memphis to go to a crime scene. I said, sure, if that'll help.
Okay, great.
Even so, Ken East decides to keep his meeting and his relationship with Carol a secret.
Some of the investigators that were working on the case, they work hard on it, and if they think that I'm having them follow up on leads from that's given to me by a psychic, they're not going to be happy about it.
Ken and Carol meet at the scene of the second murder. 28-year-old Laria Ann DeBerry had been shot twice. The bullets confirm she had been shot with the same gun as Sharon Moore. But who pulled the trigger? Can the psychic help the detective?
Okay. I asked for a photograph of the actual body at the crime scene, and I used that along with the energy of the location where the body had been found. It's right in through here, so that I could then get the energy of the murderer. I was able to see the murderer, to describe the murderer. I saw an Afro-American man in his early 40s. He had a goatee. He had more refined features. Wiry build, 5'8", 5'9".
Ken East takes notes on everything the psychic says.
That's a lot of description from anybody, even a witness.
Now Carol Pate's insights take her inside the mind of a killer.
This man is a multiple personality. But the murdering personality is named Al.
She doesn't know if that's what part of the name that is, but that's Al. She's coming up with that.
Carol sees 2 opposite personalities in the killer.
I got a shy personality, the true personality. But Al was a very strong, violent, evil personality. Al wants to take over.
Carol's vision of Al is chilling.
He is compelled to kill. This was a serial murder. This was not going to be 1 or 2. It was going to be more.
Ken East isn't taking any chances. He decides to use the psychic's description of the murderer in his investigation.
It would give us more to talk to the witnesses in the scene where the prostitutes were hanging out. The more you give, the more they'll give you back.
He's not done.
The psychic and the cop agree to keep in close touch. Ken gives Carol photographs of the crime scenes and the victims to tune in on any new visions of Al.
I said, you have an open line to me. You call me if anything comes to you.
What I was looking for when I was tuning into the energy is what we could do to catch him. What was his next move? Who was his next victim? Where was it going to be?
They don't have long to wait. A week after the DeBerry murder, the badly decomposed body of another prostitute, 30-year-old Linda Tratt, is found hidden in an alley.
We knew there was something fishy because the prostitutes were being killed.
With this discovery, the homicide investigation is expanded. Sergeant John Garner is put in charge.
That case was assigned to me, and then I inherited them all and became the lead investigator on all the cases.
With the body count rising, John Garner and Ken East both suspect Carol Pate's prediction is true. A serial killer is stalking prostitutes in South Memphis.
We felt sure if we didn't get on top of it that there would be some more bodies found.
10 days later, there is another shooting. 22-year-old Tony Thompson, a transvestite dressed as a woman, is driven to a remote street corner, dropped off, and then shot twice. This time, the killer makes his first blunder. Tony is badly wounded, but alive, the first real witness.
He'd been shot 2 times, and 1 bullet was still in his body. So we took him to the hospital and the doctors removed the bullet, and they did match.
Tony Thompson is able to give police a detailed description of his assailant. Incredibly, one that matches the description Carol Pate gave to Ken East.
A lot of sketches don't turn out to be exactly like the person looks either, but that sketch kind of fit her description that she'd given, and I was impressed with that.
Meanwhile, using materials sent to her by the detective, Carol has more visions of the murderer, but she has difficulty seeing past the killer's evil personality, Al.
Al was overwhelming. I couldn't see where he lived because when he would go home, Al would go away. And here would be this shy, quiet man that barely had a handle on sanity.
Prostitutes on the street confirm Carol's and the transvestite's description of the killer.
We showed our sketch, and some of the ladies of the night had seen this man.
But investigators still don't know who he is. What the police, the psychic, and the prostitutes of South Memphis do know, however, is that the killer is getting bolder. 6 days after Tony Thompson is shot, 37-year-old Joyce Thomas is killed with the same gun in the same area.
When the third murder came in down on Peebles Road that was tied to the 32, we had bullets compared, and we knew all 3 came from the same gun.
With the third killing, police released the news to the public. There is a serial killer in South Memphis. TV reporter Kathy Thurmond Edwards was assigned to cover the story.
And all of a sudden we have this on the news and a serial killer. It was quite bizarre.
3 months have passed since Carol Pate told police that they had arrested the wrong man for the murder of a young woman. It's now clear that a vicious killer matching the description that the psychic gave Captain Ken East is targeting prostitutes in a South Memphis red light district. Can the cop and the psychic catch him before he strikes again?
He was totally evil and violent, incredibly violent.
A serial killer is shooting prostitutes in South Memphis. 3 women are now dead. And psychic Carol Pate has given a homicide detective an insight into the mind of the killer.
This man is a multiple personality, but the murdering personality is named Al. This was not going to be 1 or 2. It was going to be more.
With each shooting, police intensify their investigation. The time between each murder is getting shorter, With a serial killer on the loose, all of Memphis is on edge.
Here we are in the Mid-South, the Bible Belt, and we've got this strange story about a serial killer targeting prostitutes and transvestites. It was the talk of the town.
But police aren't totally in the dark. Carol's description is confirmed by the only eyewitness, a transvestite who survived a shooting. He also gives police another lead, a vague description of the killer's small gray car. This also fits with what detectives have been hearing on the street.
Anybody talking to prostitutes on the street? Have you had any trouble? And yeah, I had trouble with a male black, and he was driving a gray car. And
So we knew we'd kind of narrowed down to the small gray car point.
Back at her home, Carol has another psychic vision.
Hi, this is Carol Pay.
The psychic calls Captain Ken East with new information. She feels that the killer is about to murder again, but there is a twist.
I saw into the future that his next victim was going to be at a stone church in that area where the other murders had occurred. I didn't think we could stop the murder, but I knew that he could be captured because of the stone church.
we have several that fit that description, and they were downtown area. We passed this information on to the Uniform Patrol and Vice Squad and told them to be on the lookout.
Armed with the information, police step up patrols in the area. But despite that increased presence, the very next night the killer strikes again. He shoots another transvestite, 30-year-old Mark Eric Lewis, near the Claiborne Temple, the oldest and biggest stone church in Memphis, just as the psychic had predicted. But again, he only wounds his victim, and Lewis is able to run for his life and call for help. The next day, Lewis relives his ordeal to reporter Kathy Thurmond Edwards.
All I could see was fire. And I said, "Oh, you shot me." He said, "Shut up." And I went to reach and grab him. I remember pushing him, because I pushed him, he fell back. That's how I got the second shot hit me in the neck.
Finally, police get a big break. An officer in the area spotted a small gray car leaving the scene of the crime.
Lieutenant Ralph Roby, who was a night detective lieutenant, was en route to the scene of where Lewis was shot, and he saw a small gray car in the area and just jotted down the tag number. We came into work that morning at 8 o'clock. He was getting off. He came by homicide and said, "I saw this last night. It may be of help, may not."
And we ran the license number and found out that it belonged to James Barnes.
James Barnes is a 44-year-old delivery man who lives and works in South Memphis.
And so we go to their house and talk to his wife, Diane, and she said that her husband's been driving the car and been going out at night and that kind of thing. And so we still didn't have as much evidence as we really liked, so we decided to set up a surveillance on him.
The theory was that if he leaves the house, goes to a prostitute area to pick a prostitute up, take him down in hopes of finding a weapon. If you don't have the weapon, at least we can talk to him and maybe get him to confess to it, basically.
The very next night, James Barnes drives back into the red light district of South Memphis. Homicide detectives follow him closely.
And what we're trying to do is follow him to the crime scene areas in that area part of town. And he did, in fact, go there. Well, they tried to stop him at that point because we didn't want anybody else to get hurt.
He stopped in front of the Lorraine Motel, the site of Martin Luther King's assassination 20 years earlier. Barnes tries to escape, but detectives are right behind him. Finally, he's cornered, and police arrest James Barnes.
At daylight, the investigating detectives went back out on the scene and did find a gun, and it was a .32 caliber.
The gun found at the scene of the arrest is confirmed to be the same one that killed and wounded all of the prostitutes. With James Barnes in custody, questions still remain. What motivated his killing spree? And is Carol Pate's prediction that he suffers from a split personality correct?
We came down to interview him in the homicide office, and then at one point he wanted us to handcuff him. We basically said, you know, what's going on with you, Barnes? And he said, you know, I'm not him, my name's Al.
The psychic was right. Al was behind the killings.
Al wanted Barnes to kill his wife and children, and he would argue with him, and every time he wanted that to happen, that's when he would go out and pick up a prostitute and commit a murder to satisfy Al.
How could the psychic have known about the evil personality called Al locked inside the killer's head?
You've got to be impressed with the name Al when he's sitting there during the interrogation and he starts acting crazy and asks you to handcuff him so that he won't hurt you or himself.
Barnes was in there, but I could barely feel him, and I felt a reluctancy from him to do what was happening. But Al was overwhelming.
But the psychic has even more information. 2 weeks after Barnes is arrested, Carol Pate calls Ken East back with a vision.
Ken, I think I have some more information for you. I saw that he had taken clothing of another victim and had left it on the banks of the Mississippi. It's between a church, a small church, and the old bridge.
Of course, I had no recourse but to send somebody out there. At that point, I mean, after I've been dealing with her so long, I had no reason not to.
After a search, a detective finds blood-stained clothes exactly where the psychic said they would be. A few days later, the clothes are identified as belonging to Linda Tratt, whose decomposed body had been found 4 weeks earlier.
We were all very impressed that we found what we found. It's just one more thing that was tied together as evidence.
But the bullet that killed Linda Tratt was never found, so Barnes can't be charged with her murder. Police charged James Barnes with the murders of Sharon Moore, Loria Ann DeBerry, and Joyce Thomas. District Attorney John Campbell prosecutes Barnes in court.
You can be a multiple personality and not be insane. You know, if the personality that's controlling you at that particular time knows the difference between right and wrong, he's competent.
Barnes eventually pleads guilty to all 3 murders. Today, he is being held in a prison hospital where he will remain for the rest of his life. In this remarkable case, psychic Carol Pate was right about almost every detail. The police did arrest the wrong man. She provided an accurate description of the killer.
Wiry build, 5'8", 5'9".
She knew he had multiple personalities and that the personality behind the killings was named Al. And she predicted that he would be caught near a stone church. She even made a believer out of Captain Ken East.
So any time that you get information that's from somebody that has no reason to know it, and then you find the information is in fact true, you have to be impressed with that.
Carol Pate's uncanny psychic visions undoubtedly helped a cop catch a killer who had terrorized Memphis for months.
I wanted him caught. That was the important thing. He had to be stopped.